And over the past 10 years, we've been trying to help develop the human resource capacities for Africa. And we've done this in various forms, but in the past 4 years, this drive has helped us to establish this company called JobWork Ghana. In fact, the parent company is Knowledge Web Center, where Knowledge Web means that we generate knowledge and we equip the human capacital with the requisite skill and competencies to be able to work. And this dream has come to life. And even when we have started this project in the space within Ghana, we've already landed some collaborations with a number of agents across, Europe. We are facing an era that is a post-COVID era where most people suffered from some complications from COVID. Others lost a lot of their human resource, for which reasons a number of countries are opening their borders for immigrants to come and support their economy. So it is actually against this background that we are having this meeting. So just a brief one. We believe that the human resource is the greatest asset that we have. That's what we believe. We don't believe that the greatest asset of a country or a nation is rather the mineral resource like the gold, the diamond, and the oil. We don't believe that. The greatest human resource, the greatest resource is the human resource. And if you follow trends, you realize that the sub-Saharan Africa in 2050 is going to have the most youngest population. And what that means is that it presents us with that opportunity to develop and kind of harness the things that we want to do for, to develop the entire continent of Africa. So what you see there about us, it says that about 2050, more than half of sub-Saharan African population will be under the age of 25. And that is serious. And making this diverse continent rich in human and natural resources that might stimulate inclusive growth and help poverty. So with the world's largest free trade zone and largest consumer market, the continent is charting a new course for developing by capitalizing on the potentials of the human resource. Now, you realize that India is now, for the past 2-3 decades, all that India is doing is developing the human resource competencies and then moving it to the next level. That is what they are doing. So because of that, it has become imperative for Africa to set up and, as it were, make sure that they develop the competencies of the human resource. So what we have done is to establish JobWork to train people free of charge and then present them to the other part of the world and then get some fees for that. And that is what we have done. So we have Knowledge Web that does the training, corporate training for companies and then institutions. And we have JobWork where you go and sign up as somebody who is unskilled, and I will be posting a number of videos there. There'll be aptitude tests. If you are here and you have not signed up on JobWork, whether you are going to Australia or not, please, Fifi will teach you what to do. But JobWork Ghana, when you Google, you will see it, and then you make sure you join. So this is what I have for you, and I'm going to hand over back to CC to take it up from there. Sissy, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, can you hear me, everybody? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Boison. First, I didn't do the introduction for Dr. Boison. Please forgive me, sir. Let me quickly introduce Dr. Boison. For people who don't know Dr. Boison, Dr. Boison is a senior lecturer and head of department for procurement, logistics, and supply chain management at the GCTU University here in Ghana. He's also a track chair of Academy of African Business Development. He's also the chairman of the Review Board Committee of National Health Insurance Scheme here in Ghana. He's also chairman of the Ethics Review Board of Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders. He is former IT manager of Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority, and also the CEO of Knowledge Web Center and Job Work Ghana. He's married with 4 kids. Look at this whole profile of Dr. Boison, and you could see that he has been in the job industry, but in training, like he said, and training skilled workers. Like there's one famous quote he used to say. For me, he's a famous quote. He says that humans, the best mining to do is to mine humans, not gold, not diamond. It's only humans. And I wrote that down somewhere, and I've really seen it. He says the best resource are human resources. So without much ado, let me introduce our next speaker, the immigration consultant, Miss Margaret. Are you online, Miss Margaret? Please give me a wave. Miss Margaret Ando Okai. I hope I pronounced it well. Please forgive me. Forgive me, Miss Margaret. It's Miss Margaret Ando Okai. Like it says, the Australian is the gateway to the deep and meaningful life experience. I know most of us have known Australia through Nat Geo Wild. We don't know Australia through the other means. But Australia is also known as the lucky country, traditionally because it's the land of the dreaming. Her journey in Australia commenced within the educational system in 1984 when she went there in grade 3. Wow, she has been there since primary school in Perth. Well, Miss Margaret, we'll talk about Perth. I had a boyfriend in Perth though. So Miss Margaret moved from primary, secondary, and tertiary studies in Melbourne, Australia. And then she moved towards consolidating these experiences in the workforce. She established in 2006 as a consultant in migration. She has worked in the capacity as a volunteer and paid work for government and for non-profit organization. Her current work is mainly consulting with individuals and businesses regarding the Australian migration process. Her qualifications include postgraduate diploma in immigration, in addition to ongoing professional development through legal training and refugee legal. Welcome on board, Miss Margaret. You have the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I thought I was on. For your introduction, and thank you, Dr. Boison, for this great opportunity. Just as Princess has said, I am a Ghanaian who has been living in Australia since 1984. I see that there are some hands up. Is that because you want to make a comment about our introduction, or have you just accidentally pressed the hands up button? No, okay, I'll continue on. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful, 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 wonderful. Okay, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I live on, Australia, on which I am here and you're overseas in Ghana. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So the reason for the acknowledgement of country.
Margaret, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry.
Please, are you the one sharing the screen?
I am sharing my screen.
Okay, all right.
So the reason why I've made the acknowledgement of country is just to share information about the original owners of the land that I currently am on, which is Australia. Australia has a history in terms of migration, which started with the European settlement. But prior to that, there are Indigenous people who live on this land and continue to live on this land. And Australia has a history in terms of its interaction with the people of the first Australians. And so as a result of that history, which is not a very good history, there has been a change towards ensuring that not only is there a formal apology and sorry, but also an acknowledgement as to who the land belongs to. And then also in terms of engaging the Aboriginal population more frequently in work, education, and health. So most often here in Australia, there is if there is a meeting, there's always an acknowledgement of country. Okay. So in addition to the introduction that has been made about myself, I commenced working as a migration agent in 2006, mainly working with government not-for-profit organizations, and specifically in the area of student visas and also skilled migration visas, and then protection visas in terms of refugee status of those people who are migrating from countries that are engaged in war. And these countries include Sudan and Afghanistan and parts of India. A lot of Indian also come to Australia to seek protection due to religious persecution. And then also parts of, I think I've said Africa. I also work as a teacher. I am a lecturer and have been lecturing in early childhood education at Victoria University. In addition to that, I worked as a leader in early childhood here in Ghana and also in Australia, where I was leading early childhood educators in their interactions with students. So my academic and skills and experience vary between migration law and teaching. So bringing those two together really has given me a lot of experience, a lot of skill in liaising not just with clients and applicants who are looking forward to are migrating to Australia, either from another country or who are currently in Australia and would like to move from a temporary residence to a permanent residence, or from a permanent residence to an Australian citizenship. So those qualifications and experiences allowed me to really consolidate my interactions with clients and applicants who are wanting to migrate to Australia. So when you look at this photo is out of focus and we're all in a jumbled mess, but life depends upon your focus. What's your focus? You can focus on the picture that's blurry, or you can focus on the happy faces and the smiles on the faces. This is my family. I have 4 children. The eldest is 22 and the youngest is 14. And they're all at university or at school engaging in education at the moment. I'm going to start off my presentation just in relation to my own experience moving from Ghana to Australia and the process that I went through. I'll on information with you.
Margaret, you're breaking. Sister, can you hear Margaret?
No, it's breaking up.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to be sure.
And when I say skilled migration, I'm
Margaret,
talking about
Margaret, you are breaking.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
We lost you for a while, so if you can just step
Can you
back.
hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, wonderful. Let me just sort out my internet issue.
Okay.
Okay, so back online. I was just discussing about how I'm going to outline my presentation. I'm just going to talk about my presentation in regards to my own experience as a migrant coming from Ghana to Australia. And then through that, you will gain some information about the migration process. And then I'm going to focus on the skilled migration. When I talk about skilled migration, I'm talking about applicants, professionals who are currently living in Australia, in Ghana, sorry, who would like to migrate to Australia and who have professions in the fields of nursing, teaching, engineering, health services, business, basically who have a bachelor degree with experience working in the workforce. That's what is labelled as a skilled migrant. So Australia is labelled as the lucky country and also the land of dreaming, just in terms of the location of the country, the opportunities that it provides families who make the choice to migrate to Australia. Unlike some of the other European countries, some of the other countries that most Ghanaians choose as their first priority when they're deciding upon where to migrate. You know, it's common that Ghanaians will go to the US, the UK, Canada, and parts of Europe. Australia is not on the #1 list. And for many Ghanaians, it's because it's far away. The common answer to the question of, why not Australia is because it's far. But the journey is worthwhile. And the reason why the journey is worthwhile is because Australia is relatively young in terms of European settlement. It's 200 years old. So the amount of opportunities that avails migrants is tremendous, not only in education and work, but just generally in terms of living, the ability to migrate and fully settle into the community and feel as if you belong and are part of the community. And that's one of the great advantages that Australia has as opposed to other countries. And so, you know, I'm going to be using myself as an example. My father migrated from Ghana to Australia in 1984. He came here as a student, and we lived in Perth for about a year, and then moved to Canberra for another year or so, and then to Melbourne. And Melbourne became our home since 1986. He migrated as a student, and so in Perth, he studied agriculture. And then from Canberra, he went on to study social work. And then finally in Melbourne, where he completed a doctorate degree at the University of Melbourne in social work. And this process of arriving in Australia as a student and then continuing to further his education from a bachelor through to a PhD not only allowed him to settle and feel as if Australia was his home, but it also gave his children, as in myself and my siblings, the opportunity to also settle and feel a strong connection, a genuine strong connection to the country, the people, and the environment. So in terms of student visas and the process for student visas, there's the process towards getting a student visa. And one of those is to have a conversation of enrollment, and then to be a genuine student who wants to come to Australia and study. There's the English language proficiency, which I'll talk more about later. I guess when people hear about, and can you hear me? I'll just pause.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. One of the greatest challenges in terms of migrating to Australia as an English-speaking country is the English language proficiency. When people, Ghanaians, see the English language proficiency, they often feel as if it's a barrier to migrating successfully in Australia. But I would encourage you to look at it in a different perspective. And that perspective is that Australia is an English-speaking country. And so in order to be able to migrate to Australia and settle in Australia and feel part of the community, one of the most important ways of doing that is that ability to communicate within yourself and comfortable in engaging in the daily activities of living in the country. So I know that in my conversations with Ghanaians in regards to migration, often talking about English language or the IELTS is seen as a cultural barrier. Not that it can't be achieved, but it's just seen as a cultural barrier. And it shouldn't be seen as a cultural barrier. It's just another pathway. The other criteria include having sufficient funds, health insurance. Most visas that are required for applicants to arrive and remain in Australia require health insurance for the benefit of the applicant, for the benefit of the person who is engaging in the process of migration. There's also the work opportunity. And then once the student has completed their visa, they have the opportunity to continue to remain in Australia by applying for another visa, and that is the stream of the skilled migration stream that I'll talk about more. So this is the path that my father took back in 1984. The migration program obviously has changed dramatically from 1984 to where we are now in 2022. In the 1970s, Australia's migration program was very much Eurocentric. It even had a white-only policy in the 1970s, considering that the Aboriginals are the same color scheme as myself. So it had a white-only policy. And then also in terms of language and culture and traditions and all of those sorts of things, in the 1970s, prior to the 1990s, I would say, all of those behaviors and attitudes that individuals take on in terms of identifying themselves with a certain culture was not encouraged. But now, in 2022, the settlement process enforces and encourages migrants to keep language, keep religion, keep culture, keep all of those, idiosyncrasies that are prevalent in all cultures, that the individual settles and feels that Australia is their home. My children are coming downstairs. Okay. So in terms of student visas and the process of not just student visas, but skilled visas, any sort of visas, there are conditions on the visas. And these conditions ensure that once the applicant is in Australia, they are respecting the visa requirements. Sometimes these visa requirements mean that there is no work or limited work. And other times the visa requirements, the visa conditions will state no further stay, meaning that once the applicant has finished their process of I can hear myself.
We can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. That's wonderful. Once they have finished their visa stay, that they return back to their home country. Okay, let's move on from this. Okay, let's go on to the skilled migration. So in terms of skilled migration, there's opportunities for migrants to migrate to Australia, either on a temporary resident visa, a permanent resident visa, or an Australian citizenship. Temporary resident visa or permanent visa. And then from the permanent visa, they have the opportunity to move on to an Australian citizenship. But there are quite a few Australians who have been permanent resident in the country for a significant period of time, who remain as permanent residents and don't move on to the Australian citizenship. But there is a significant difference between a permanent residency and Australian citizenship. Just like in most countries, as a permanent resident, you are limited in the ability for you to access all of the benefits that is available to an Australian citizenship. The first one is a passport. As a permanent resident, you are able to remain in Australia and travel outside of Australia within 5 years and return within 5 years. But if you travel outside of Australia past 5 years, you need to apply for a resident return visa that allows you to come back to the country. Whereas if you're an Australian citizen and you have the passport, then you're able to, move freely back and forth. The other advantage of being an Australian citizen is access to education. The way that the education system works here in Australia is that we have the early years program, which is basically 3 and 4 year olds. Then we have the primary school program, which is from 5 years of age all the way up to the 13 to 14 years. And then we have the secondary years, which is from 13 to 14 years of age up to 16 to 18. So from year 7 to year 12, from prep to grade 6, and then 3 and 4 year old kindergarten. And then from there, we have the tertiary program and the vocational program. When I say vocational program, I'm referring to certificate 3, diplomas, certificate 4s, which allow you to work in professions that do not require a lot of responsibility. And then we have the tertiary program, higher education, which is the bachelor, the master's, PhD, and so forth. And so currently the way the funding works in Australia is that if you're an Australian citizen, you can take out a HEX help, which basically means that the Australian government will supplement and provide a sort of loan to assist you through your tertiary studies. And then once you are in gainful employment, then you are able to pay back that loan, that interest-free loan, over a period of time. It is automatic. It comes automatically out of your pay and goes towards chipping away or reducing the debt that you have with your HEX debt, which is what it's called, the Higher Education Commonwealth Supplement Program. So over the course of time, the way that the government funds education has decreased over time. There used to be in the 60s and 70s, it was free higher education studies, meaning that students were not required to pay any money to go to university. But now, as an Australian citizen, you are able to go to university, but you get you can opt in for a loan, and that will be paid once you are in gainful employment, and it's automatically taken out of your pay. So that's one advantage of being an Australian citizen, is not paying upfront fees. The other advantage is gaining access to healthcare and other government services in terms of legal assistance and, you know, all of those sorts of, you know, government services that are provided to citizens all around the world. But in terms of the ability for the Australian citizen to live and thrive and successfully navigate the system of life in Australia, these government services really does support the individual citizen to have access to healthcare, to have access to finances if required, to have access to affordable living, you know, all the basic needs that an individual requires to maintain a good balance in life. And this is attainable for all, this is attainable not just for permanent residents, not even just for temporary residents, sorry, not just for Australian citizens, but for permanent residents and also temporary residents as well. So the support systems are here and available. It's just about accessing those support systems. And that's where somebody like myself as a migration consultant comes in to help newly arrived migrants or those who are planning to come to Australia to navigate the Australian system. Okay, so in terms of, I am not going to provide significant detailed information about every single visa under the skilled migration scheme. I'm going to provide you an overview of the skilled migration program. And this overview will just give you a general perspective about the skilled migration program. And then if this is a migration program pathway that you think is suitable for you, then we can have more of a one-on-one consultation or a group consultation, depending upon the streams, the skilled migration stream that each applicant is looking forward to. So what we have is the Australian Skilled Occupation List. The Australian government has a list of occupations that it sees as in demand, and these lists are based on statistics in regards to jobs and employment that have not been filled, and so looking for overseas workers to fill the gaps in the Australian economy in terms of work. I'm not quite sure whether you can see some of the occupations, but for example, there are psychologists, social workers, we have secondary school teachers, we have ICT business, we have surgeons, psychiatrists, plumbers, wall and floor tilers, accountants, management consultants, chemical and materials engineers. So as you can, childcare center managers, construction managers. As you can see, there are occupations from varied professions. So from the health sector, from the engineering sector, from the science sector, from teaching and nursing. Nurses are also there as well. So the whole process of the skilled migration program has changed significantly over time. In previous years, it was relatively less challenging and much more convenient for migrants to navigate in terms of accessing the skilled migration stream and then migrating to Australia and becoming permanent residents and then moving on to Australian citizenship. It was fairly easy to navigate. Now the process has become, the legislation and regulation has tightened with time, and this has been due to migrants who do migrate to Australia and either overstay their visas or work in areas that they're not qualified for, or provide documentation that is not genuine, or just come to Australia for the sake of being in the country, not really contributing or benefiting the society. And so due to all of those areas of concern to the government, the migration program, the migration legislation, the regulation has been tightened. And so in 2000 and around 2013, there was a significant change in the migration program, which introduced a staged process of applying for the skilled migration. So that stage process meant that there was an additional category, and that category was an expression of interest. Prior to around 2013, the expression of interest was not included in the skilled migration program. Prior to 2013, if an applicant wanted to migrate to Australia and have their visas, their qualifications and skills assessed, the qualifications and skills were assessed by a corresponding assessing authority, and then they applied for a visa, and from there, they were either granted the visa, refused the visa, or asked to present further information towards making a decision. But now we have to go through the expression of interest. Now, the expression of interest feels like you're making an application because you're providing all the documentation that you would provide in an actual application, but it's just an expression of interest that is being made to the Department of Home Affairs to state that I am interested in migrating to Australia as a teacher, and I have been assessed by the Victorian Institute of Tertiary of Teaching, and they have assessed that my qualifications meet the standards. I have the experience, I am of this age, and I have contributed so-and-so to my community. And so this expression of interest is then provided to the department, and then the department over a period of 2 years will either decide to grant you an application to apply for the visa, or will reject your interest. And so, as the information on the PowerPoint outlines, it is a 3-stage process, and it is for these specific visas, 8, 9 skilled independent visa. The skilled independent visa just basically means that you are coming to Australia on your own, not being sponsored by family members, business, or the department. Nominated means that you have been nominated by a employer, and work regional means that you are coming to Australia and working in a regional area. Regional area is the parts of Australia that are not highly populated. And then there's a business talent visa. The department uses words like the talent visa to really bring in and to attract those people who have a high level of experience, qualifications, skills that can contribute significantly to the community. And then the business innovation and investment. So just in regards to the whole migration program, the whole purpose of the migration program is really to ensure that any applicants that make their decision to come to Australia really come to provide a benefit to Australia. And that benefit is outlined within your qualifications, within your experience, within your skill set, within your proficiency in English and all the other points that I've talked about. And so I just want you to have in the back of your mind as I'm talking that Australia is really looking for, some of the terminology that's used in the regulation is genuine, really looking for genuine entrants, migrants who want to make Australia their home. And as I've outlined previously, the reason why Australia uses those terminologies because Australia is a country that you can really make, because it really provides for needs in terms of education, labor, work, and health. It's not like any other country around the world in terms of providing for its citizens. Okay, so I talked before, no worries, I'll just wait until you can hear me.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Are you able to hear me now? Wonderful, thank you. So I talked briefly about the English language test, and I also shared about the hesitancy of some migrants, not just from Ghana, but from European countries, from Asian countries, who really don't like the IELTS. I mean, the IELTS is not the International English Language Test is not a program that is inviting for migrants when they choose to migrate, because of the connotations it has in terms of English and the ability for somebody to be proficient in English for them to travel. But as I stated earlier, it's just a form of communication. And because in Australia, the form of communication is English, then the government wants to ensure that those who are coming to the country are able to communicate efficiently. And so I would like to reiterate and encourage you to look at the IELTS test as a form of ensuring that if you do go through this process, you're able to communicate efficiently and effectively with other people in the community. That's what the IELTS test is all about. So there is the academic and the general training. With the migration program, it's the academic that you will need to take, and the score is anywhere from 6.5 or 6 to 7.5, and that is relatively attainable for most professional Ghanaians. Here in Australia, there are significant amounts of professional Ghanaians who are working in all areas of employment, as listed in the skilled occupation list, who have gone through the IELTS academic and have been able to attain 7, 8, 9, and so forth. It's not a language test that is difficult for Ghanaians who have gone through the education system in Ghana. It's something that can be easily attained. So moving on to work-life balance in terms of migrating to Australia and the ability to have that balance. Australia, the way that the Australian culture, the Australian way of life is that it does allow you to have a relatively achievable work-life balance, as opposed to some other countries that you may go to where the competition is very high and you feel as if all you're doing is working or studying and not being able to enjoy life. Here in Australia, once you are you have been able to get gainful employment, then you can go on to, the trajectory of life in terms of obtaining a house, starting a family, if that's something that you're interested in, and going on to holidaying and all of those sorts of things. It's an achievable outcome, which a lot of Ghanaians have been able to do here in Australia. I'll just give 2 examples. One example that, apart from my own example, but anyway, one example is that of a family who moved to Melbourne I think they moved here maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And the husband arrived as an aeronautical lecturer and the wife was a teacher. And so he currently lectures at RMIT University, which is one of the top 5 universities here in Melbourne. And they have settled in very well. They have just recently given birth to another child, making it 3 children that they have, of which 2 of them, I think, were born in Australia. And then, so they came in as temporary residents. They're moving on to a permanent residence. And are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can.
Yes, hello.
You can be
Yeah,
heard.
hello.
Yes, you can be heard.
We can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
are here.
Oh,
Can hear
thank you. Thanks. So they're just moving on from the temporary residence to a permanent residency, and going through the permanent residency has been a little bit of a challenge, just in regards to ensuring that all their documentation is available to the department to review. But in saying that, they have settled in well. They're both in gainful employment. They are pursuing family. They're involved in church, and I speak to her every now and then, and yeah, the settlement has gone very well. Another example is that of a couple who just arrived here in Australia, in Melbourne, 6 months ago. They live in Queensland, and husband is an engineer and the wife is a teacher. She arrived as a student, so she's studying a master's in educational psychology, I think it is, and her husband is an engineer who's working in his field. And so in terms of what success means as a migrant to Australia, is just basically having a job, making sure that your visa requirements have been met, you're not overstaying, you're providing the department your current address, and just ensuring that the process that you take from arrival as a temporary to permanent is smooth. When that process is smooth, it means that it allows for the statistics in the migration department to look favorable upon the Ghanaian community. And these objectives can be met by consulting with somebody like myself, who has all the experience, of engaging with migrants who are newly arrived to Australia or who are making their journey to Australia. Now, in terms of some problems that can occur once you do make the find the application and then travel to Australia. These problems occur mainly because the communication with the Department of Home Affairs has not been constant. It is really important that the communication with Home Affairs is constant. If it's not constant, then you will have circumstances where the Department of Home Affairs will send a letter in regards to a documentation not being provided, or a documentation that has been lapsed, or some minor detail that has lapsed from yourself because you're focusing on settling in Australia. And that is why it's really important to consult with a migration agent, because as a migration agent, that is my job to ensure that at all stages, I'm keeping communication with the department in regards to your application, in regards to your temporary visa, in regards to your permanent visa, in regards to you moving from a permanent visa to an Australian citizenship. Because the last thing that you want, once you have been accepted and you have arrived in Australia and you are on a permanent visa or a temporary visa with a trajectory of moving on to Australian citizenship in terms of staying long-term in Australia, making Australia home, is for you to receive a letter to say that this document has lapsed or you haven't provided this information, because it just puts on added stress that you don't need. And so in involving a migration consultant really ensures that the expertise that I have gained over the years is applied to your visa and ensures that you have a stress-free period or stress-free time in your engagement with the Department of Home Affairs, because it can be extremely unnerving to get a letter or an email from the department about something that you just didn't think of. So I would strongly encourage you that if you decide that Australia is the place that you would like to migrate to, that you consult with myself and the team that we have at Job Ghana to ensure that your migration process is smooth. I think that is all the information that I have for you in terms of just an overview of the migration program, the skilled migration program, the student visa program. Sorry, the one other visa program that I didn't really touch on is the temporary activities visa. The temporary activities visa is very similar to the skilled program, but you don't need to do the English language test, and it allows you to come to Australia for a very short period of time. When I say short period of time, anywhere between 3 months to 12 months to engage in an activity, whether it's a social activity, a cultural program, an entertainment program, any of these activities that will bring a benefit to Australia based on your social understanding, your cultural understanding of Ghana. So the Department of Home Affairs has included a visa that allows migrants to bring into Australia their own knowledge of their culture, their own knowledge of entertainment, their own knowledge of sports, their experience and skills in those areas. But this visa is a short visa. But when you do arrive in Australia with a temporary activity visa, it does allow you to survey the land and see whether this is a place that you would like to call home and settle. And then it also allows you, if you do have another qualification, another skill set, then, for example, if you are a lawyer or a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, but you also have an interest in music, art, Ghanaian arts works, then you're able to migrate to Australia and engage in cultural information with the Ghanaian community here in Australia with your artistic knowledge or musical knowledge or sporting talent, whatever it is that you're good at. And then while you're here, you can also be investigating about your profession as a lawyer, your profession as an engineer, your profession as a builder, a teacher, whatever it is that you're engaged in. So that temporary activities visa is a pathway that does not require the English language test, and the processing time is shorter, anywhere between a few days, a month to 3 months to process the visa, depending upon the category of temporary activity visa. So that is all for just a general overview of the migration stream or the migration visa subclasses for Australia. We have the temporary visa, the permanent visa, and then moving on to Australian citizenship. I hope I've provided you with enough information to start thinking about making Australia a place where you would like to migrate to in terms of education, work, and social cultural activities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Miss Margaret. Thank you so much for the info.
Yeah, Caesar, before you come in, Margaret, I think you may want to touch on the process of application. If you have that slide, the application process. Yeah, so if you have that slide for the application process and also fees, because that will be a question then. Are you with me? You're muted.
Yes, I am with you. I am with you. Look, with the fees in terms of applying for the visas, each fee has each visa application has its own set of fees, and the fees range from the temporary activities visa, which is around $200, $300, to the skilled visa, the skilled stream, which is what I spend a lot of time talking about. It ranges anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500. That's just to make the application to the department. In amongst that, you also have your English language test that will have fees associated with. You have a history, a criminal record history that will have fees associated with. You have the health insurance that will have fees associated with as well. So there are, and then there's a migration consultancy fees as well. So there are 4 sets of different fees that is required to be paid. Altogether, it's around $5,000, $6,000 mark in terms of from start to finish. Making the IELTS test, if that's the process that you take, through to making the application, through to the application from the Department of Home Affairs. In regards to the stage step-by-step process, the step-by-step process. I just wonder, Dr. Bison, if you could share your screen and post up the process that we had mapped out. I don't have it with me.
Okay, just a minute.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So in terms of the step-by-step process, the first step is to make the application via the Job Ghana website. That is an important step because that provides us with all the information we require in regards to your biodata, in regards to your qualifications, in regards to your skill set, in regards to your experience. And then from there, we are able to review that information and then provide to you the, thank you very much, Doctor. And then provide to you the visa that is most accurate or that is most suitable for yourself. So then from the Job Ghana website, then the information is relayed to myself as the consultant migration agent. I review that information and then make an application on the Department of Immigration website. From the Department of Immigration website, all the information that you have provided in terms of your biodata, in terms of your qualifications, your skills, the health information, the criminal records, all that information is put into the department's website. And then from there, the department will now review the application. Once they have received the application, they send a letter. That letter is an acknowledgement to say that we have received your application and we're reviewing it. Once a letter is sent to our agency, we will provide you with a copy of that letter, and it's an acknowledgement of receipt. If there are no outstanding documents, depending upon the visa that you are applying for, you will either, within a specific amount of time, anywhere from a month to 3 months to 1 whole year, for some skilled visas, you will get a letter from the department of, we will get a letter from the Department of Home Affairs to state that 3 things: the visa has been granted, the visa has been refused, the visa has been granted, but we're waiting for one or two further information from the applicant. Once that is done, then we will send that information back to yourself. And then from that process, then you've got a window period to come to Australia. You're required to pay for your plane ticket to arrive to Australia. Once you have arrived to Australia, depending upon your visa application, whether it's a temporary activity visa or a permanent independent visa, the skilled stream, then you may commence your activity, your work. You commence your activity, whether it's work or student or engaging in a social activity, entertainment activity, or a sporting event. So I've put the 2 different categories of visa, meaning temporary visa, permanent visas, and I've generalized the process. So generally the process is, number 1, make the application online to the Job Ghana website. That's the first stage. The reason why it's important to do that is so that we can review it and decide, make a analysis as to which visa is most suitable for yourself. From there, it goes on to the Department of Home Affairs website. And then from there, they make a decision as to whether they need further documentation, they grant it or refuse it. Once, in terms of refusal, if your application is refused, there is no right of review outside of Australia, but if you were inside of Australia, you may have a right of review. In terms of refusal, we will not be making fictitious applications. So from stage one, once we have reviewed your application and we find that there's strong evidence in terms of your qualifications, your skills, and your experience that you'll be granted a visa, then we'll proceed to the next stage towards grant of visa. Our partnership, our organization we're not going to be in the habit of making applications to the department for you if we strongly feel that your application is going to be refused, because it's a waste of time for yourself, it's a waste of time for us, and it's also a waste of money as well. The whole process of the department of engaging with the department rests on myself in terms of the expertise that I have in communicating with the department to ensure that they have all the documentation, they don't need any further documentation, and just to ensure that communication is as often and as frequent as possible, so that we don't have any surprises with the Department of Home Affairs sending information about, providing a document that we had no idea about. So the key to the success of the success of a grant of a visa is in the communication with the department. And that is what my job is to communicate to the department on your behalf. I think that is just a general overview, because look, there's just a lot of information in terms of the process of the whole process of the migration scheme. And this process takes a long time. It takes many further meetings and conferences to be able to give you all the information so that you have a full and thorough understanding of the migration scheme. But working as a migration agent since 2006, I have that knowledge and that expert understanding. And so working with Job Ghana, we will ensure that once you make that application, the process from start to end is smooth for yourself and smooth for us as well. So are there any, I know that there are some questions.
All right, thank you so much. Just to add that what we have done with Margaret is to have a partnership that will not get into problems with immigrants. Okay, that's what we have done. And that's to say that if you look at the process, Margaret has indicated that there are some fees that we have to pay when we are submitting your document. So from our side, there are two categories of visas: the working visa without IELTS, which goes for 5,200. Margaret gave you a range from 5,000 to 6,000. And then we have the skill stream, those who will be going with the IELTS, which is $6,000. We are making this thing public so that no one could take this and then decide to make some people pay 10,000, 12,000 for just an entry to Australia to work. But whatever we are charging as fees for the processes fees, Margaret has ensured that these are fair. And that's why, to the extent that she told you some of the fees that we have to pay, $200, this $1,500, just for you to know the stages we go through. So it is very unlikely that when we get to stage 5, you will be rejected, because we have put in, as it were, shocks to make sure we don't get there. But at stage 5, when you pay 60% of your fees, some of these amounts will be used in the processes. So we are making a wild guess that if all the shocks we put in fails and you have paid the 50-60%, and we have paid the Home Affairs Office in Australia your processing fee, then in all fairness, the 60% you have paid, should they discover something that we all didn't know, that you hid from us, and for which reason they are denying you, then what has been paid to them cannot be paid back. We cannot refund it. So out of the 60%, 30% will be the money that is retained for the process that we have put in. And we want this to be clear in our terms and conditions. These are there. We are most unlikely to get here, because what we do not want to do is to take anybody's money when we know that your documentation is fictitious. So we don't get there. So it's free. To apply on this platform is free. There are no application fees. There are no upfront fees. Please take note of that. You don't pay anything. You only pay when you have a notification that your document have been received by the Home Affairs from Australia, of course, and that's going to come through from Margaret, our partner, licensed agent there. So we are on that kind of a journey to ensure that within the next 5 years, we're able to move not less than 4,000 people to a diaspora to work. And that is why we are making sure that we do things in its proper manner. So I just want to drum home this for you guys to understand. We are not interested in any extra money. We are not cutting corners for anyone. When you get your document and they are genuine, we'll explain things to you and make sure you go through the process. The process is not supposed to be a laborious process or a laborious process, or it's not supposed to be a very difficult process. So I'll leave it for Caesar. Caesar is going to do the Q&A section for the next 10-15 minutes, and then Fifi will come and take you through the application process. There are a lot of questions that I've seen. So Caesar, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you very much, sir. First, thank you, Miss Margaret, for thank you for the session, and I really come to understand a lot of things here. Some people asked, the first question they asked, which you've answered and which also Dr. Boison has reiterated, was how much is the processing fee? That has been answered. And somebody also asked that, is the IELTS only for Ghanaians? What about other countries? Another person sent me a message through WhatsApp and asked, without IELTS, I've been instructed all my life in English. Can't I write to the embassy that I have been instructed all my life in English educationally, that I don't need IELTS? I don't know if you could answer that question, Miss Margaret.
So Margaret, maybe you can note these questions down as they come, so we can take them 5 on a run in order to save time. Okay, so I think there are 2 more. If you can add more questions so that she can you start so that she can note down?
Okay. Then another person asked, what is required for the talent visa? What documents are needed for the talent visa? Okay. And another one says that, can I come in with dependents on the skills visa? Can I come in on the dependents on the skill visa? Please, I also want to ask everyone to send me their questions via chat. I'm piling them up so that we could ask Miss Margaret. Miss Margaret, if you've noted these ones down, you could answer them while the questions keep coming. Thank
No
you.
worry. Thank you. Thank you, Princess. Sorry, is that your name? Princess is your name?
Princessa.
Princessa.
Or you could call me
Lovely.
Tessa
I can
or
call
Ceci,
you
anyone.
Ceci.
Tessa or Ceci. Yeah.
Tessa. Okay, thank you, Tessa. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just start with the IELTS. The IELTS test, the IELTS question was, I have been studying in English in Ghana. Can I just write to the Home Affairs to state that I've been instructed in English, so do I need to take the IELTS test? And then there were other questions in relation to the IELTS test. So I just want to go back to the IELTS test and talk about that again. So the International English Language Test, it is very common perception, not just from Ghana, not just from Africa, not just in Asia, not just in Europe, all across the board. Nobody likes, no culture, no language, nobody likes to take the IELTS test because it's almost like an upfront to everybody's culture, everybody's language, everybody's communication style. But I want to reiterate again that you need to see the IELTS test as a form of communication. And so although in Ghana, the instruction is in English, and I was in Ghana for 3 years, so I'm a little bit familiar with the educational system in that I taught at a school in Ghana for 3 years, almost 3 years. So I'm very familiar with the English in Ghana and the English in Australia. And like I've stated before, if you have done your bachelor degree, if you have done higher education, bachelor, master's, PhD degree in Ghana, you wouldn't have a problem completing the test, the IELTS test. It's just like any form of assessment that you would have done at university while you were studying your bachelor, your master's, or your PhD. So it requires that you study for it because it's a test, and it's just going through it's going through an understanding, it's fleshing out your understanding of comprehension, of comprehending sentences in English. That's what the IELTS test does. It tests your ability to comprehend English sentences. And so once you have reviewed the booklet, there's an IELTS booklet, there's a lot of information on the website in regards to the IELTS test and the IELTS test and taking that test at various agencies across Ghana. And the British Council is the one that administers that test. And I understand that some people may be thinking that, you know, I'm a Ghanaian, I've got my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD. My English is better than most people who live in Australia or somewhere else. Yes, that would definitely be the case. That is the case, but it's still a requirement that you have to go through. It's not anything that I personally have added to the. It's not something that I have added to the requirements. It is legislation. It's in the Act. It's in the regulation. No matter where you come from, you have to sit the IELTS test to get a skilled visa. And like I said, most Ghanaians' understanding of the English language is far more proficient than Australians living in Australia. So you're not going to have a problem completing the IELTS test. It's just a requirement that has to be done. The talent visa. So the talent visa, along with some of the other visas that you may want specific information about, these are information that we can provide to you on a one-on-one consultation, because, you know, every visa has its own specific requirements.
The camera is frozen. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in terms of providing specific information about, detailed specific information about subclasses of visa, that is the process of giving migration advice. And so once you have completed the Job Ghana website information, then we'll move on to providing specific information in specific to the visa that is corresponds your qualifications and experience. Can I bring dependents? So all visas allow you to bring your dependents, and dependent is not just your spouse or your children. Dependents are your spouse and children. So if you're married, you can bring your husband or your wife. And if you have children, you can also bring your children. So it's, in some circumstances, applicants come to Australia on their own as an individual applicant. They arrive, they settle in Australia for 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 year or so. And then once they feel comfortable with their settlement, then they bring their husband or wife and their children. So the common practice for most applicants is that the main applicant, which is a person who completes their application and is granted the visa, they first arrive, and then their wife or their husband and children arrive at a later stage. But definitely dependents can migrate to Australia. And in terms of dependency, in terms of the student visas are also provided to primary and secondary school students as well. And so, you know, if there are clients who would like for their secondary school child to come to Australia, then they can bring their mother and father as guardians who are looking after the secondary school student. And so there is that possibility of secondary school students also migrating to Australia and completing their secondary school years here in Australia. So those were the questions, just in regards to the IELTS and the specific question about a talent visa, and then the dependent question.
Okay. Can I go on with other questions, please?
Yes, please go on with other questions, please.
All right. Someone's asked, I am a fashion designer for both male and female dresses. Where do I fit in?
More questions?
And then the second one goes, I am a forklift reach stacker operator. Am I qualified for the skills visa application? And then the third one is, how long can you stay with a working visa? And then let me ask another one. In case you get a job offer with your valid appointment letter from an Australian company, How do you acquire your visa? And what is the duration for? Miss Margaret, can you hear from there?
Yeah, sorry,
from there.
The line is breaking out. Your internet.
Yes,
It could be
can you
internet
restate the
connection.
questions?
Okay. The question goes, I should start from the top. It says, if I'm a fashion designer for both male and female dresses, where do I fit in? Then the second one goes, I am a forklift reach stacker operator. Am I qualified for the skills visa application? Then another person asked, how long can you stay with a working visa? Then, in case you get a job offer with your valid appointment letter from an Australian company, how do you acquire your visa and what is the duration for acquiring the visa? But let's deal with this 4 first before I go over to the other questions.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Tessa. Okay,
Well,
so these sets of questions, so the first two is once again focusing on specific individual visas, talking about fashion designer and the forklift driver. If you have specific questions about your own qualifications and how that fits in to the skilled stream, I'd really encourage you to just, it doesn't take long to fill in the Job Ghana website information. Even if you don't have the documentation in terms of the police check, the health check, and some of the other documentation that you require, even if you just complete the biodata with your qualifications and your skills, and then submit it, and then at the later stage, provide the rest of that information, then we can review what you've got and provide you with some information specific to your qualifications, your skills, your experience, and so forth. So all of those, all of you who are asking for specific information about your area of expertise, I would encourage you to please fill in the Job Ghana website information. Please fill that in. Okay, and the other question was the length of the job offer. If I am offered a job, how long is it valid for and how do I acquire the visa? So the job offer, yes, the job offer in relation to the visa application, if you're offered a job and you're being sponsored, that whole process is one process that you will get information directly from our agency. There's a lot of information that I need to provide to you in regards to, first of all, looking for a job, second of all, finding a sponsor, third of all, making the application to the department. So that's a 3-stage process. The first one is looking for the job. The second one is finding a sponsor, a business sponsor. And the third one is the visa application. So once all of that is done, that information comes to our agency, and our agency will provide you with that information. So that question that you have asked, once again, if you are able to go onto the Job Ghana website and put in your information, then we can give you specific answers directly related to the your question. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense because
yes,
thank you, because every individual is different in what they are in their every individual is different in terms of their qualifications and their experience, right? And so this platform can only provide general overview of the migration program in Australia. In terms of providing specific information or specific answers about your qualification, your expertise, your job that you're looking for, that requires a one-on-one consultation. And that's what our organization does. But just generally in terms of looking for work in Australia, Australia, like all other countries, have the platforms on the websites that allow you to seek a job and locate the job and make the application. And that's also something that we can assist you with in terms of looking for a job in Australia, making the application, reviewing your resume, your CV, your cover letter, ensuring that your qualifications, your skills, your experience, all of that corresponds to the criteria of the job that you're looking for. That is also a service that we provide and can help you with in terms of looking for a job in Australia and being successful at that, the process, the job interview process. More questions?
Yes. Okay. The next question goes, is there an age limit to all this?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one goes, what does it mean by strong ties to home country?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to get visa? Is it possible to get visa from Australia on student scholarship and work at the same time? Explain what you mean by proof of service to community. I have 5 more to go, so let's deal with this one, then I go on to the next 5.
Okay, so the migration program has one goal and one objective. That goal and objective is that any migrant coming to Australia is of benefit to Australia in terms of work, study, and cultural contribution. That is the goal of the Australian program. That is its one objective and its one goal. And so in terms of age limit, there is not an age limit, but there is an age range between the ages of 18 to 45 that if you apply, the points score is higher. So the Australian migration scheme has a points tally, a points test. And so depending upon your age, you'll get a certain amount of points. Depending upon your qualifications, depending upon your work experience, depending upon the contribution that you have made in terms of, let's go to the second question, that's the strong ties. Strong ties means that you are working in Ghana, you have family in Ghana, you have a community in Ghana, whether that is a church community, a sport community, a cultural community, a work community. That shows the Australian government that if you're a temporary entrant, you have strong ties to Ghana, and that means that you'll return back to Ghana. If you're not able to prove that you have strong ties to Ghana, then the message that you're giving to the Department of Home Affairs is that you don't have any plans on going back to Ghana. You're coming to Australia as a temporary resident, as a temporary entrant, and your plan, the communication that you're providing to the department is that your plan is to remain in Australia. So when you're applying for a temporary resident, a temporary entrant, it's really important to provide information that shows your bank statement, you know, that you've been working for an X amount of time and you have a steady stream of income coming in, that you have a strong relationship with your local church community and you've got a message from the pastor or the minister, you have strong connections with work and you've got a letter from their work to say that you've been working for this amount of time and that you have been given leave to travel to Australia and that you'll return back within this amount of time and your work is there for you when you come back. You have other ties. You're part of a cultural group, you're part of a entertainment group, a music group, you're part of a sporting group, anything that provides evidence that you have been contributing to Ghana. So it serves two purposes. The first purpose is that you will return back to Ghana upon the expiry of your visa. The second purpose it serves is that because you've been having strong ties to Ghana, that also means that when you come to Australia, you will do the same thing too. You will be you'll be gainfully employed, you will be a part of a church group or some social cultural group, and you have family and all of these things just goes to show that you're going to be a benefit to the Australian community. And that's a key word. That's another key word that I want you to ponder and think about in terms of migrating to Australia. The goal is that you are going to be a benefit to Australia. How are you going to be a benefit to Australia? By those various means: qualifications, skills, experience, and community involvement. Those are the major key criteria that the immigration officer is looking for when they review your application. I'm a student on a scholarship. I'm a student on a scholarship. Can I work at the same time? Yes, as a student, you have a right to work. So you have 40 hours within a fortnight to work when the university is functioning or when the TAFE is functioning. In Australia, we have two varied education systems in terms of adult education. We have the higher education system, and that deals with bachelor, master's, and tertiary. And then we have the vocational education system, and that deals with Cert 3, it deals with Cert 4, it deals with diploma. Those two are diverse, different areas of education. And so once you do arrive in Australia and you have a scholarship or you are a student and you are working in those areas, then you are granted the condition of work in Australia, and that's 40 hours over 2 weeks. That is when school is in session. When your university is not in session, when your institution is not, lectures are not going ahead, then you have the ability to work unlimited hours. But in terms of your dependents, so if you're here on a master's degree or a PhD, your dependents are able to work indefinitely. They can work as often as they like. So for example, if you come to Australia and you are a master's by research, a master's by coursework, or you're a PhD student and you are a master's by research, then you are limited, but your husband or your wife, they can work as many hours as possible. And then proof of service to the community. I think the proof of service to the community, I answered that question with a strong ties. So in the Ghanaian culture, a lot of Ghanaians serve the community through the church. Most Ghanaians attend some type of church, whether it's on Saturday or Sunday, and that is proof of community service. And so in that scenario, you get a letter from your pastor, a letter from your minister, a letter from your leader in the church to say that you are a member of this church and this is what you do in this church. That is proof of service to the community. The other service to the community that I think Ghanaians engage in is you know, helping and providing assistance to family members. So once again, you can get a letter from your local leader in terms of council leaders. Yeah, so just a letter from the local, somebody that is an important, reputable person in the community to write a letter stating what it is that you do in that community. And so providing service to your family members is a benefit to the community, and that is recognized as a benefit to the community. Okay, I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Another question. I'm going down through the questions I've written down here. It says, does Australia accept OE tests? Yes, please.
We have a couple of minutes to finish, so if you can be very snappy,
Yes.
if you will share
Okay.
brief to travel beyond 2 hours.
Let me round up the questions. There are two questions here. It says, how can a registered nurse here in Ghana migrate to Australia? And also, I am a nurse and has passed the OET exams for doctors and nurses. Do I still need IELTS? Another person asks, does Australia accept the OET test? That's about the OET test. Does Australia accept it? Do they need to write the IELTS test too? And then someone also asks, how much of a total balance should be in our bank account before we apply for the visa? Someone also asks, can I apply for a tourist visa through your office? I've already answered that person. Yes, you can. And what is required? What is the required band score for nurses who wishes to migrate to work? Can you brief us on that, please? That would do with the questions for now.
What was the first question? Sorry, I missed the first question.
The first question was, how can I've passed the OET exams for nurses and doctors. Do I still need IELTS?
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much. Okay, so in regards, Tessa, do you mind just muting everybody apart from myself, please?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tessa. Okay, in regards to the nurses and the health professionals, there are two assessing authorities. One is the Australian Nurses Midwifery, sorry, no, it's not. All right, the names have escaped me. But anyway, there are two assessing authorities. In terms of the OET exam, I'm not familiar with what the OET exam is, but from my memory and my experience, I don't think that the OET exam is part of the exams on the list of, it's on the list of acceptable English language test, but I'll have to check that and get back to you. But there is a clause in the regulation that allows you to present other exams and have the department review those exams. But that's something that I'll have to review and get back to you on. And then also depends upon the time limit, because there's a 12-month time limit as well. And so, so those are the two things. Three things. The first is that there are two varying organizations that assess nurses and doctors. The second one is that the OET, there could be a leniency for the OET to be accepted, but that's something that I'll have to go through the legislation to clarify. And the last one is a 12 months So as long as it's done within 12 months, if it's done within 12 months and we provide it to the department, they may be able to accept it. Okay. In terms of money, generally the amount of money that is required for all visa applicants is enough money to sustain you over a 3-month period in Australia. The actual sum, something that I'll have to get back to you about, I'm sorry. And then the tourist visa question has already been answered. I hope I answered those 3 questions. Hello.
Lisa. Okay, so
Yes.
How much
Hello.
of a total should be in our bank account, and can I apply for a tourist visa through your office?
I think those questions have been dealt with.
Okay, and another one is the last one is, what is the required band score for nurses who wishes to migrate to work?
What is the what?
The required band score.
Oh, band, B-A-N-D. 7 students, nurses are required to have 7. But once again, I will clarify that information and get back to you.
Yeah, you gave a range of 6.
Yeah, there is a range of 6.5 to
7.0.
yeah. Good. Yeah, that's a range. But there is, so look, each individual skills, in closing, can I just reiterate that in closing, it is important that you log on to the Job Ghana website and complete the basic biodata. Once that basic biodata has been completed, then we can provide you with specific details in regards to each visa subclass. That is the best information I can give you. At this present point in time, I have provided a significant amount of information in regards to the general overview of the visa requirements. And I think that is sufficient information for applicants to go to the Ghana Job Ghana website and complete the biodata information. And then from there, we can provide further information specific to questions as how many IELTS do I need to get for nurses? What is the exact amount of money that I need to have in my account before traveling to Australia? Can a fashion designer come to Australia? Can a plumber come to Australia? All these are very specific questions that requires that I have further information before providing. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Miss Margaret. Thank you so much. Are we taking any other questions again, Dr. Boison?
No, I think it's okay. We're going to share the video. Let me just say that Fifi Agribattles is the head of our technical team, and he's going to do some 10 minutes presentation of the forms, how to fill the forms. Let me also state here that we work with agents who will recruit for us. And agents are not supposed to charge any fee higher than what we have. We have your commission, which we will discuss with you. We're going to share on the platform in the chat the email address that agents are to write to. If you want to be an agent, you write to us and express interest. We'll do an evaluation. And if that is okay, we take it out from there. If we evaluate and we think that you cannot do it, we'll also give you a response. So let's take note of that. And again, the fees for the 2 streams, the 12-month working visa is $5,200, and for the skill stream is $6,000. No upfront fees charged. It doesn't cost you anything to do the submission. We only allow you to pay part of the money when your documents have been evaluated and accepted. So let's take note of that. Fifi, if you can share your screen and then walk us through this process in just some few minutes. Fifi Agribatums, are you there? Are you there, Fifi?
He's here. He's got the frozen screen. That's what he said.
No, he can share his screen. The screen is not.
You can share your screen.
Okay, hi guys, hi. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for making time to join me. I'm trying to load my screen. Okay,